Welcome to another episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C. And today, I wanted to institute, so we're going to start with kind of a series that I want to do on Sundays, and it's going to be about travel. So I love to travel, and it looks like the channel is sort of evening out. There's, a few things for sports every now and then. A big thing will come up with sports. So the first thing that pops into my mind is Rafa Nadal is going to be going for his 13th French Open championship and to tie Roger Federer's total Grand Slam record of 20 in into May, beginning of June at the French Open. There'll be some other things throughout the year with sports that I'll just do an episode on just because I enjoy it. And then really it's 3 days a week. It looks like for Forest Fen stuff, at least while we've got, while we've got themes. And then politics is really heating up with the 2020 election. I think that's going to be really fun to cover and to talk about. And so I want to do 3 days a week. Maybe we'll cut that back to 2. We'll see. And then the last day of the week on Sundays, what I like to do is start talking about travel and sharing a number of my travels with all of you out there in YouTube land. So what I'll say is I don't remember the number. I've been to maybe 18 or 20 countries. I've been to all but 3 of the U.S. states. So there's a lot of ground to cover in terms of travel and kind of sharing all of that with you, because I think one of the interesting things about travel is that when you travel, at least the way I like to travel, and if you prefer to go to all-inclusive resorts and have everything paid for, and you want everything as smooth and streamlined as possible, I get it. I 100% get it. It's a vacation. You shouldn't necessarily have to work very hard on your vacation. You want it to be relaxing. And not everybody enjoys the adventure as much as my wife and I do. And so, of course, not everybody speaks multiple languages like my wife, and I can butcher and get around in Spanish, but she's really good at it, and so that makes things a lot easier too. If you can speak multiple languages, you can go to multiple countries and get around. Having said that, and I'll talk about that, I don't speak any French. I took French in 8th grade, and those road signs were something else. But that won't be for months before we get to France, I'm sure, if we do one travel video a week. But I really think growing up in a small town in eastern North Carolina, I wasn't really exposed to a whole lot of travel. And I didn't find out till later that my family, my grandparents on my dad's side, had done a lot of traveling, and then their parents and stuff. And so there is this kind of history of people in my family that have done a lot of international travel. And I guess that's where I get the bug from and enjoy the adventures. But growing up, there weren't a whole lot of people that traveled. A big trip for us was like a shopping trip to Raleigh, which was about an hour and a half away. And then like the really ritzy people would go to New York to do some shopping or something, and they'd come back home and they'd have really fancy clothes. And that's another aside. So I thought it was really interesting when I worked in D.C. and I'd go to these uppity parties, and the people there would be like, "Oh, where did you get that?" And they were like, "Oh, I was in I was in Paris." And I was like, "Oh, this is so ridiculous," because when you're in like a smaller town, the people go to Raleigh or Charlotte or something, and they've got stores that smaller towns don't have. And then if you live in those bigger towns, you go into like New York or DC, and then if you're in like DC or LA, you got to go to Paris or London or Tokyo or something. You've got to go somewhere else to find something that's hip that not everybody has access to or can get to make yourself feel better or whatever that is. But if you're not traveling just to buy stuff and show it off so that you can feel better about yourself, the really neat thing about travel is that you kind of, it just opens your mind to new experiences of how people live. And so for me, growing up in Eastern North Carolina, I had a very small view of what the world looked like as I was growing up, right? It was everybody was like, that area. And if you take a picture of where I'm from, it's very diverse from a black-white issue, or stance, or whatever you want to say. There's it's a predominantly black town where I'm from, and so it is still somewhat segregated by, like, the train tracks, although it's moved over, and there's sort of kind of one area, one corner of the town, and so it's getting more integrated, but it's still kind of, you have like this side of town and that side of town. And that was just sort of how I grew up. There wasn't internet, TV wasn't like it is today, and so the idea of travel, air travel, seemed very expensive, and only the wealthy would be able to afford air travel. And so flying to Europe or flying to South America or Central America or Asia just seemed, far out there. And so really it didn't really cross my mind. And the first opportunity, and I'm talking about international travel, not even, and just even within America or the U.S., we have such a tremendous land area that it's really actually interesting that you could just travel within the states and be well traveled. And even though you'd only be in one country, you would have never traveled internationally, you would see things that you don't see in a lot of other countries. In somewhere like Europe, that's half or not even half the size of the United States. You may get multiple cultures in terms of languages, and obviously food, but you can get that in the U.S., where you have different cultures, different native cultures, and all of the mixing of different people groups that immigrated over the history of America. And so this first travel video, what I want to talk about is kind of, I'll progress from my first travels and how those affected my life and how they made, I guess, the experiences broaden my horizons and kind of my view on the world. And so we'll just start with, I was 15. I just turned 15. It was the summer of 1995, and I had the opportunity to go on what they call the Grand Western Tour. And the Grand Western Tour was 2 buses that left from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it was like 84, 86 kids and like 16, 14 adults, something like that. So it was about 100 people on these 2 big buses. And we basically left from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, drove through Tennessee. We stopped at Dollywood because that's what, Southern rednecks like to do. And stopped at Dollywood, and then we stopped in St. Louis, and we got to ride the elevator up the arch. That's creepy. If you've never been to St. Louis and seen the arch, I suggest you go. And then I don't know if you can still ride up that elevator. I think it sounded highly unsafe in 1995 when we were doing it. Hopefully they've either shut it down or they've completely redone it, because it made all sorts of terrible noises. And I'm not a huge fan of heights. In fact, I don't like them at all. And so being up in the top of that arch was terrifying. The little windows, not a big fan, but I did it. And then we drove through, I think it's called Salina, Kansas, not Salina. I like to say Salina, but I think it's Salina. And it's the geographical center of North America, I think is what is that. I mean, that was 25 years ago. But yeah, so we were basically trying to drive out west as quickly as possible. So it only took a couple of days. And then from Kansas, we went to Colorado Springs, and then like Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Yellowstone, Montana, went whitewater rafting in Montana, and then we went up to Seattle, and then down Highway 1 through the Redwoods and LA to Disneyland, Las Vegas, Santa Fe, New Mexico, San Antonio, New Orleans, and back. So we went kind of all the way around the United States, but mostly the Western United States. For those of us from the Southeast, that's kind of the hardest part of the country to get to, and you may not ever get around to some of those states. Sorry, and so it was really fascinating. So basically, once we left Eastern North Carolina, or I guess Winston-Salem's in the central part, but once we left North Carolina, Tennessee, now we're getting to places that I've never been, and experiences like the Arch, and then you see out west, and out west is totally different, and the Rocky Mountains totally different, and just the history you learn about the gold rush and the 49ers, and you learn about the big battles and all of this stuff that took place in the Southwest. And it's nice when you're in middle school and you're like, okay, that's the history of our country, but it doesn't really sink in, right? There's Old Faithful and Yellowstone, and that there are these huge trees, the redwoods, and you're just like, great, probably never see them. They're 3,000 miles away. So to be able at 15 to have the opportunity to travel across the country and to see and meet different people was an experience that I think really opened my mind up to, or my mind up to the idea that that travel was something that was accessible and something you could do on a fairly modest budget, and then the experiences were worth way more than the cost of the travel. And so when I look back on, first beginning to travel and the stories and the people that I traveled with and the stories that we all experienced. Now, I don't keep up with anybody from that trip anymore. I had some friends and everything, when you're in high school and you write. That was back when you wrote letters. You didn't have email, or chat, or, cell phones and texting and stuff. But there were a number of stories when I look back. And we went to Salt Lake City too. We went and sat in the choir, Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and I got in trouble when we were in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. If you can't tell by the fact that I'm doing this YouTube channel, I like to talk, and I'm a pretty extroverted person. And we went to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir or church to hear the choir. Apparently, it was famous, and I hadn't really heard of it. And coming from the Southeast in the more conservative Bible Belt, church was a more, let's just say it was different, right? When we walked into the Mormon Tabernacle Church, there were all of these lights, like screwed into the ceiling, like TV lights, it was a set. It really was. They had turned this church into a TV set because apparently I found out, when I was there, that they broadcast this all over the world, and this is a famous choir or something, and so they were, anyway, it just seemed really fake to me. It came across as like a TV production is what it was. And so there were all these guys with earpieces and talking into their, it was like Secret Service. And so I just didn't really feel like I was in church. And so I was cracking jokes sort of semi under my breath. And how like when you're in a serious place and you're not supposed to laugh, but something strikes you as funny, and because you're not supposed to laugh, you laugh all the more. And it's like whatever was said or whatever the situation was funny, but it wasn't that funny. But because you're not supposed to laugh, it was 100 times funnier than it should have been. Well, I couldn't control myself and laughing, and I got in massive trouble from the one of the chaperones on the trip, and they basically like pulled me aside and they were like, I don't know about you, but like I respect the Lord or something, and like you're being so disrespectful in a house of God. And I was like, this is like a TV set. It's not even a church. Like I don't even know what you're talking about. Like if you can't see all the guys talking, like this is a joke. We disagreed. We did not agree to disagree. I just disagreed with him, and so I got in trouble. And the next stop on that trip was from Salt Lake City, was Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And apparently everybody got to go on this cool trip. Like they took wagons or something, and they had like they reenacted something, and they got to eat dinner off of, I don't know. Apparently they cooked on campfires, and it was supposed to be one of the highlights of the trip, and I missed it because I got put in like detention or whatever you want to call it, like house arrest. So they left me in the hotel. And I guess I got to walk to like Burger King or something. I don't even know what was in Jackson Hole at the time. In the summer, it wasn't a vibrant ski town. It was just kind of what it was. So when everybody left to go to go do that event that night, I stayed in the hotel and I got sick. And I got like massively sick I was throwing up, and apparently a couple other kids on the trip got sick. So we went to the hospital, and I'll never forget this lady. She was what I would think of in my mind as a 15-year-old, as like a burly Western frontier woman. And she was this nurse, and she was a big girl. And I was probably 6 feet tall at the time. I don't know. I'm a little over 6 feet tall. And now, but I was close to the same height, but I was skinny, super skinny, like probably 145 pounds. And so she basically, we're in the what do they call it, the emergency room, and I'm back, and they have like the curtains or whatever, so I'm laying on this table, and she goes, she opens the thing, and she goes, you Carter? And I was like, yeah, because they had already done like the little test, and I was like, okay, and she had a syringe, so I was like, I'm gonna get a shot, but whatever, it'll make me stop throwing up, I'll feel better. So I start rolling up my sleeve, and she's like, nah, honey, drop your pants. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. This burly Western Wyoming lady is getting me to drop my pants. I'm 2,000 miles from home. I'm 15 years old, and this lady's asking me to drop my pants in the ER and give me a shot in my butt. That's the only time I've ever had a shot in my rear end that I can remember. I mean, I think I had something on my rear end when I was like 4, but I vaguely remember that, or not really, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, getting a shot in your rear end is one of the like worst things. It's terrible. I don't like shots. I don't know many people that do, but I remember laying down on my stomach and just thinking, how did I get myself in this situation? I got in trouble. I got, put on house arrest, and then I got this sickness. I'm so far from home, and she stuck that thing in my rear end, and I turned around and I looked, and I just saw like this bead of blood on my butt cheek, and I was like, you just stabbed me. Like, what is this? So she was like, just lay here for I don't know, 15 minutes or something. And I don't know what it was. She left, but then I had to go to the bathroom. Like, I had to pee. And I was like, she told me to lay here, but I'm just going to like pee on myself. So I got up and I went to like jump off the table. I couldn't sit, so I like got up and I couldn't put my butt cheek on the table. So I went to jump off the bed, and when I put weight on the leg that had the shot, that butt cheek, it just crumpled. So I like half fell to the ground, right? And then I had to pull myself up, and then I'm hobbling, and I'm like, where's the bathroom? And they're like, you're not supposed to be up. And I'm like, I'm going to pee all over your bed, so let me go to the bathroom. So then I go to the bathroom. I can't stand on that one leg. It hurts so bad. And I think she hit. I think she did the shot wrong, because I know if any of you are like doctors or nurses or something, y'all are gonna be like, it shouldn't be that bad. Well, it was that bad. So then I get to the restroom and I'm like trying to pee standing up, but I can't stand on both feet. So then I'm trying to like balance on one leg, and that's not working. So then I'm trying to turn around, and then I forget that I can't sit because my butt hurts so bad. So I'm like, it was. Ugh. Well, if you can't tell, I haven't been back to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, since I was 15. That was not the best experience. And then I'll tell you a couple other quick stories. We got to ride a cool train, coal burning train, I believe, from Durango to Silverton, Colorado. That was a cool thing. If you're ever in that area, or I don't know if they still do that or not. I mean, all of this stuff was 25 years ago. And then I'll tell you one of the things, one of the neat experiences I had that broadened my horizons and my experience was we had dinner. We were in Seattle, and we had dinner at the Space Needle. And so I'd always heard about the Space Needle. I was a big basketball fan, so the Seattle Supersonics have the Space Needle in their logo and all that jazz. So I was like, oh, this is cool. So we're going to go to the Space Needle. Well, in the Southeast, if you're not familiar with our beverages of choice, it's sweet tea and then nothing else. Everything else is just worthless. Or, I mean, you might like Mountain Dew or Coke or something, but sweet tea is like blood. Like it's a lifeline. You can't live without sweet tea. But we do sweet tea differently down in the South, where you heat up the tea, right? You make the tea, hot water and the tea bags, and then while it's still steaming hot, you pour as much sugar as possible into it, until the point where even the sugar's still sitting at the bottom. I mean, you just load the tea with sugar, and then when it cools, it's like syrup, basically. Well, that's what I was used to. This whole unsweet tea that you put sugar in yourself, like that's for the faint, right? For the weak, for the meek, for those of you that are fin tubers. Anyway, we go up to the Space Needle, and they're like, waitress goes, "What do you want to drink?" And I said, "I want a sweet tea." She goes, "We don't have that here." And I said, "What do you mean you don't have sweet tea?" She was like, "Well, we have like hibiscus tea, and we have like, lemon tea, and we have Earl Grey tea." And I was like, "What are you talking about? What are all these teas? Like 42 different kinds of teas." I'm like, "I just want sweet tea. It's just like dark tea, black tea, whatever, with sugar in it." She goes, "Oh no, we have unsweet tea, but then, you have sugar on the table." And I'm like, "No, I'll just have a Coke." Because you can never get unsweet tea that's cold to the right sweetness of Southern sweet tea, because when it's hot, when the liquid's hot, when the tea's hot, it can absorb more sugar and hold it. Yeah, you just can't do it. So that was the first time I'd ever realized that not everyone in the world drank sweet tea the way Southerners drink sweet tea. Now, hopefully you found that story as entertaining as I did. It's silly, but at the same time, when you're 15 years old, you don't really have many experiences, or most 15-year-olds don't have the experience of different cultures or different regional cultures in one country, different cultures in multiple countries. So really, I just wanted to kind of reiterate, just tell a couple of funny stories, and just say, hey, if you haven't traveled much, I encourage you to get out and explore a little bit. Travel, meet some new people, have some new experiences, try some new foods. You may not like them. The people, you may not like the food, you may not like the places, but you may like them. You may like those experiences, and you may find out that what you experience you like better than where you are currently, or you may want to have that experience again. So I really, I'll just say thanks to my parents for letting me go on that trip and paying for that trip to experience a number of states and a number of places that really got my imagination moving and kind of my passion for travel, because it's been a lifelong passion for me over the last 25 years. Yeah, God, that's just so crazy. So old. But it really has been a lifelong passion over the last 25 years to travel to multiple places. And, hopefully in the next couple of years, I'll hit the last 3 states of the U.S. and then keep going to different countries because it's fun. And then I'll bring you some more videos with some pictures and some videos of places that I've actually been. But because, these first few places where I traveled and these first few travel experiences, they're just going to be me talking because I like to talk and I don't really have any pictures that I can find. And if I do, they're all the old pictures, where I was just taking pictures and then you'd have to send the film off for a few days and then come back. I mean, the kids today, they just don't know. They don't know how good they have it. Just iPhone or whatever and just take a video, slow-mo, everything. It's crazy. So yeah, thanks so much for watching this episode, my first episode on travel, the Grand Western Tour in the summer of 1995. And talk to you tomorrow, guys. Thanks so much for watching.